Once upon a time, in a quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, there lived a young man named Daniel. Daniel had always been curious about the world beyond his small town, but his life was simple, working at a bookstore, helping his aging mother, and watching the seasons pass. But one evening, something changed. As Daniel walked home from work, the wind carried a whisper, a soft, melodic sound, almost like a distant voice, calling his name. He paused, glancing toward the dark treetops of the old forest on the town's edge. He had walked this path 1,000 times before, but tonight, something felt different. Then he heard it again, low, echoing voice. "Come find us." A shiver ran down his spine. He turned quickly, but the streets were empty. The lamps flickered slightly, casting long shadows on the cobbled road. Daniel rushed home, shaking off the unease. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was nothing. But that night, as he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the whisper echoed in his mind. Was someone out there? Was something waiting for him? The next morning, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling. He needed answers. He visited Mr. Allister, the town's oldest resident, a man known for his stories. The old man sat by the fire, his eyes distant, as if remembering something long buried in time. "The forest holds secrets, my boy," he said in a hushed voice. "Long ago, deep within, there was a village, but one day it vanished." Daniel frowned. "Vanished? How?" "No one knows," Mr. Allister whispered, "but they say on certain nights you can still hear their voices." A chill crept into Daniel's bones. Was it possible that he had heard the voices of a lost village? That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel made a decision. He would enter the forest. He had to uncover the truth. Armed with a lantern and a small notebook, Daniel stood at the forest's edge. The trees loomed high, their twisted branches blocking the moonlight. The air was thick, heavy, as if the forest itself was watching him. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. The world changed. The sounds of the town faded away. Only the whispering leaves and the crunch of his footsteps remained. Then a shadow moved. Daniel froze. His heartbeat hammered in his chest. "Hello?" he called, his voice barely above a whisper. Silence. Then laughter. Not one voice, not two, but many, soft where faint, like echoes from a different time. Daniel's grip on the lantern tightened. Then, from the corner of his eye, a glowing light. Not from the moon, not from his lantern, but something else, something deep within the forest. Daniel followed it. His feet moved faster, his breath quickening. The path twisted and turned until the trees parted, and in front of him, the lost village. Small houses stood untouched, lanterns flickered, and the air was filled with whispers. "You found us," a voice behind him. Daniel spun around and saw a woman in white. Her eyes glowed softly. She smiled, tilting her head. "You shouldn't have come, Daniel." Daniel's blood ran cold. "How do you know my name?" he whispered. The woman took a step closer. "Because we have been waiting for you." Daniel stood frozen, his breath shallow. The woman in white took another step forward. Her glowing eyes locked onto his. "We have been waiting for you," she repeated, her voice soft, almost hypnotic. Daniel's mind raced. Who was she? What was this place? And how did they know his name? The village looked alive. Yet something felt wrong. The houses, the streets, even the flickering lanterns. Everything looked like it had been preserved in time, as if it hadn't aged for centuries. "Where am I?" Daniel finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's expression didn't change. You are where you were meant to be. A cold chill ran down his spine. Come, she said, turning toward the village square. Daniel hesitated, but curiosity pulled him forward. As he stepped deeper into the village, figures emerged from the houses. Men, women, children. They all looked at him with the same eerily calm expression. It was as if they had been waiting for him for a long, long time. At the heart of the village stood a massive oak tree, its roots twisting into the ground like veins. Long wooden tables were set beneath it, covered in golden plates and untouched food. You must be hungry, the woman said. Daniel's stomach twisted. Everything about this place felt wrong. The villagers sat down at the tables, waiting. For him. Eat. Her voice was gentle but insistent. Daniel hesitated. Then he noticed something. The food. It wasn't rotting. It wasn't fresh. It was still, like a painting frozen in time. His fingers tensed. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. Daniel pushed the plate away. I want to know the truth, he said, his voice firm. The villagers stopped moving. The woman sighed. You always do, she murmured. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? She looked at him, her glowing eyes dimming slightly. Because, Daniel, this is not the first time you've been here. A sharp wave of dizziness hit him. His vision blurred. Memories flashed before his eyes. The forest, the whispers, the village. But it wasn't just this one time. He had been here before. Many times. He just didn't remember. We are trapped in time, the woman said, her voice tinged with sorrow. And you are part of the cycle. Daniel's breath hitched. The whispers, the feeling of déjà vu, the vanished village. He had been here before, and if he didn't break the cycle, he would be stuck here forever. Daniel's pulse pounded in his ears. How do I leave? He demanded. The villagers stared at him in silence. The woman's smile was sad. That's the question you always ask. Daniel's chest tightened. He turned, running toward the edge of the village, back toward the forest, back toward home. But as he reached the village's border, he slammed into something invisible, a wall, a barrier of air and time itself. No, he whispered, pressing his hands against the unseen force. The woman's voice echoed behind him. There is no escape, Daniel. His hands trembled. He was trapped, just like them, just like he had always been. Daniel fell to his knees, his mind racing. But then, a voice, software familiar. Daniel, wake up. His head snapped up. The villagers were fading, their faces shifting, changing, and in their place, he saw his mother, his friends, people he had known his entire life. You need to remember, the woman whispered. Daniel's heart stopped, because suddenly, he did. He remembered everything, and the truth was worse than he could ever imagine. This was not a village. This was a prison of lost souls. People who had wandered too far, who had listened to the whispers, and who had become part of the story. Daniel had done this before. He had run. He had fought. He had failed every single time. But this time, he would end it. For good. There is only one way out, the woman said. Her glowing eyes were full of sorrow. You must destroy the heart of the village, the ancient oak tree, the one thing that had stood untouched for centuries. Daniel's fist clenched. If he destroyed it, would the village disappear? Would he? Would they all? With trembling hands, Daniel stepped forward. The villagers didn't stop him. They only watched, waiting, hoping. He picked up the lantern, raised it high, and threw it at the tree. Flames erupted. The sky turned gold. The whispers screamed. And then, silence. Pure, endless silence. Daniel gasped. His eyes snapped open. He was lying on the forest floor. The village was gone. The whispers were silent. The cycle was broken. For the first time, he was free. And as he walked back toward his town, toward home, he whispered, "Never again." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more chilling tales. Your support helps us bring even more haunting and unforgettable stories to life. Have you ever experienced something strange, something you can't explain? Share your story in the comments below. We might just feature it in our next video. And remember, some places are meant to be forgotten, but what happens when they remember you? Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and never stray too far from the path.